Greetings, YouTube. Camilla Brock was listening to music in her car and, while at a stoplight, was dancing in her seat. I'm sure all of us have done this at one time or another, though luckily for you, none of you have ever had to hear me sing. A cop saw this, pulled her out of her car, and arrested her, impounding her vehicle in the process. She was later released the same day without charge. Apparently, you are not allowed to dance in your seat if you are a black person in America. But if the story had ended just there, it would have been an example of systematic racism, applying different standards to different people. And it would have just been another day in America. But this went a little bit further. This showed that, like, New York cops decided to really go the extra mile. You see, when Camilla Brock showed up the next day to get her car back, she asked for her car, which is a BMW. They arrested her. In the process of this, it came out that she was a banker, and that she is being followed on Twitter by President Obama. I'm not quite sure why she brought the last one up, but she brought it up. And the reality is all three of these things are true. She owns a BMW, she drives a BMW, she is a banker, and President Obama follows her on Twitter. Okay. She was committed because the cops said that she was delusional. And she was told she would not be released until she denied these three facts of reality: that she owned and drove a BMW, that she was in fact a black woman who is a banker, and President Obama follows her on Twitter. Now, you'd think that the cops would be able to figure out whether the car was registered to her name in a matter of seconds. It is kind of sort of what they do. We have cars registered under our names for a reason. My car is registered under my name. My wife's car is registered under her name. It is not hard to find the registration, which is in my glove box. Or look it up. Call it in. Bingo, done. Done in one. And if they could have proved that one of those three things was true, they maybe have put their thinking caps on and thought the other things were true, but they didn't. She spent 8 days in a mental ward. 8 days in a mental ward. Because the state of New York decided that a black woman cannot drive a BMW, cannot be a banker, and is not being followed on Twitter by President Obama. She is, not surprisingly, suing the state of New York, which is what you should do. And it's gotten beyond the point where things like walking while black, or crossing the street while black, or driving while black, or getting a job interview while black, or anything, any of these platitudes are too specific. All of them are too specific. In America, we could have one overarching platitude for this particular effect that we see where people of color and the police intersect. And that is that in America, it is against the law to exist while black. Flat out. If you are a black person in America, you are by default guilty of something as far as law enforcement is concerned. Doesn't matter who you are, what you've done, what you do, what you drive, how you work, what your engagement in social media is, if any. As far as the cops are concerned, they better arrest you and or beat you just to be on the safe side. Because you know, those black folks, they're dangerous. Because that's what we've gotten to. Now, of course, this is what it's been like for people of color, all people of color in America, for centuries. It is just now, in the 21st century, have some white people begin to address this issue, begin to accept this issue, begin to realize what it's been like because we've started to wake up. Because we have extended our sphere of empathy, sympathy, and compassion to include everyone around us. That some of us have decided that we will look past our white privilege to notice that, hey, not everybody has the same advantages that we do. Now, this also brings up intersectionality. The fact that different forms of bigotry interact with each other. They are not isolated. So I am not just a white person. I am also of a certain class. I am also of a certain religious status. So I'm multiple things, and all of these interconnect, just as it does for a person of color, a woman of color, what have you. I do find it interesting that the phrases woman of color and person of color, we don't say man of color, we say person of color. Person of color, person equates to man. We have to specify woman. When we say person of color, we're defaulting to a man. Funny about how that works, huh? That would be sexism combined with racism, an example of intersectionality. So there are people who could very well in the comments below make the comment, well, a white homeless guy doesn't have any power over a black person with a job. Well, you have to compare things a little more equally now, don't you? Look at a black homeless man and a white homeless man. Who has greater social, political power? And that will be the white person. Now you want to make it a little more complex? Throw in a black homeless woman, because she's going to have less political power than the black homeless man. You see how this works? It's all connected. And in this case, the connections is that the state of New York decided a black woman could not drive a BMW. A black woman could not be a banker. A black woman cannot be followed by Obama on Twitter. So they put her in a mental ward for 8 days. I would like to thank one of my subscribers who brought this article to my attention. I apologize that I don't remember who you are. I saved the link. Kudos on me. I forgot to save the actual email message, the message I got from YouTube saying who it was. My apologies. So, yeah. This is another crappy day in America for anyone that isn't the default person. And how dare they live a life that law enforcement doesn't agree with? How dare they have the temerity to exist while black?